Welcome back everyone, this is History with Hilbert, and today I'm actually going to be doing a part 2 on my previous video, which was about the symbolism and the symbols of and during the Wars of the Roses. And actually this video has been inspired by the amazing amount of very interesting, very useful comments I got on the previous video, because so many of you commented extra information that I had no idea about in the previous video. So I felt that I had to make a second part to it to go through some of these things, to clear up some of the things that I didn't know in the previous one, but now thanks to your input I do know, and just to convey this extra information which I think is really interesting. So to dive straight in, the first point I'm going to cover is this banner. This banner was Edward IV's banner. If you are curious as to any of the symbols on this banner and you haven't watched the previous video, then I strongly recommend going to part 1, which will be linked in the description, to see that video and then coming back here to watch this if you so please. Now this was, as I said, Edward IV's banner, and it reads Ich dien, and Ich dien in German means I serve. And in the previous video I wasn't aware of where this banner came from, because obviously Edward IV wasn't German. Fun fact, he was born in Rouen, which is in Normandy in the north of France, but that was because of the 100 Years' War. Rouen was actually a very important place for the English who had occupied Normandy during the reign of Henry V, but that's a whole other story which I will cover in another video. But I wasn't sure why then he would have this German motto on his banner. Maybe it would make sense if it was Latin or French, because that was, the chivalric languages. But why German? I had a theory. I said maybe it's something to do with the Burgundians, but that's probably not going to be the case, because the Burgundians really would have spoken French rather than German. But actually, because of your comments, I have found out, and it's actually very interesting, and it's related to this figure, King John of Bohemia. And if you know your history, you'll know that this is King John the Blind of Bohemia, and this guy was actually blind. And if you're wondering where Bohemia is right there on the map, Kingdom of Bohemia, so it's sort of in, that'll be the edge of the south of Germany, going on the Czech countries. My knowledge gets very bad past that area in geography terms. But that's where the Kingdom of Bohemia was, important kingdom back in the medieval period. But wait, what's that I see there? The Kingdom of Nassau? The Princedom of Orange? Oh, that can only mean one thing. How does King John the Blind of Bohemia actually link to the story of Edward IV's banner and his personal motto of Ich dien? Well, as I said earlier, there was this war called the 100 Years' War between mostly the English and the French, as the English had some claim over the French kingdom down, going back to, the Norman connection, William the Conqueror, that sort of thing. And in the 100 Years' War, there was a battle fought at Crécy. And at the Battle of Crécy, King John the Blind of Bohemia, who is blind and was getting on, actually asks his nobles to tie ropes to his horse, and the nobles then drag his horse out while he's on it so that he can go into battle and fight, even though he's blind and a pensioner. And King John of Bohemia actually then fights at this Battle of Crécy on the side of the French, so he's fighting against the English. And who does he fight against but the son of the English king at that time, Edward III. And this son is also called Edward, but he is more famously known as the Black Prince. And he has a great funeral effigy in, I forget which cathedral it is, but I'll put a picture up of it. And he goes in to fight, and actually, unfortunately, King John of Bohemia is killed at the Battle of Crécy. The French are pretty much massacred at that battle. The English really cut them down very strongly. But he fought so bravely that the Black Prince, this young lad, who there is a famous quote attached to him from this battle, which is, "Let the boy earn his spurs." And he is so impressed with this King John of Bohemia, who is an old guy and he's blind, who goes into battle anyway. This is huge courage and bravery to do that. So he actually retrieves the helmet from the fallen king. And on this helmet were the ostrich feathers, because King John of Bohemia had a connection with ostrich feathers, and he actually wore them on his helmet. And the way that Ich dien links into all of this is it means I serve in German. And this was the personal motto of King John of Bohemia. So actually, the story behind this one is that it was an enemy's motto, but he was so impressed by his valor and bravery going into battle, even though he was completely blind, that he then takes on this motto for his own. And actually, the symbolism with this goes far further as well. because King John of Bohemia with his Ich Dien then goes on to the standard of the Prince of Wales, even in modern times, which is this lovely version here, which you can see is, you know, a little bit of an adaptation from King John of Bohemia's version of it, but that is still the royal insignia of the Prince of Wales, still with the Ich Dien and still with the ostrich feathers of King John of Bohemia because of Crécy. And now as well, I mentioned some coin stuff in the other video. On the old tuppence, you also have these ostrich feathers from, again, King John of Bohemia, and then Edward the Black Prince, who then makes this his own motto, and he was the Black Prince and the Prince of Wales back in the 14th century, so that's how that links in there. And this again was down to the amazing comments that you all left behind. I'm incredibly thankful to everyone who commented on the video, and I hope you don't mind me including your comments here. But these were the comments that they had placed, and it's because of these comments that I'd heard of King John the Blind of Bohemia. I heard how he died at Crécy and something vague about ostrich feathers, but now I've uncovered this whole story thanks to everyone who commented, and you know, the amazing knowledge that is there within my subscribers is just fantastic. It's phenomenal, and it's really great to think that so many of you know so much. And of course, I'm the one who sits here blabbering on behind the camera, but then in the end, you know, so many people have so much more information than I do who are out there as well. So I just want to say massive thank you to everyone who took the time to comment, and for everyone, you know, who's amassed this knowledge, which is a great thing to then tell me as well, so that I can make this video and hopefully, you know, tell more people. So next on, I am going to talk about the rose en Soleil, which was a symbol of Edward IV. And I'd completely forgotten about this story. And now that people have mentioned it in the comments, I've remembered it, but I'd completely forgotten it, and I hadn't put two and two together. But now that they mention it, it makes oh so much sense, and it's a beautiful story as well. So I have to talk about a parhelion, which is also called a sundog. And basically a parhelion is when, obviously there's only one sun in the sky, but a parhelion is a sort of trick of the light. I'm not exactly sure of the science behind it, but basically it looks like there are three suns in the sky apart from one, and it'll be something about the precise alignment and then the light, you know, playing in a certain way that it looks like there are three suns rather than just the one. And obviously back in medieval times, this would have been, you know, this would have been quite an event, just like eclipses would have been quite an event as well. With the Maya, for instance, that's a massive one there, with, you know, sort of Hollywood adaptations in Apocalypto, for example, when this, you know, the sun is covered by, what am I saying? The sun is covered by the moon? Is that how eclipses work? Science with Hilbert. Anyway, I'll get back to history because I know nothing about science. But the parhelion, how does this link to the Wars of the Roses? Well, actually, it's on, I believe, the morning of a battle called Mortimer's Cross, which was in the late end of 1460, which is where Edward IV, his father, and his brother had recently been killed in the Battle of Wakefield. And the Battle of Mortimer's Cross is, I think it's in Gloucestershire. It's along the marches, so it's the English, where the English border with Wales is. And he fights a battle against actually the father of Henry Tudor, Henry VII, which is why I love the Wars of the Roses, because all of these things are linked. But anyway, on the morning of this battle, there is a parhelion in the sky. And initially his troops are terrified, but Edward takes it as a sign, and he also interprets it as these three suns in the sky being representative of the three sons, see what I did there, of Richard, Duke of York, who had obviously been killed at Wakefield. And so they would have been himself, which is Edward IV, also Richard, who would later become Richard III, at this time he was still Duke of Gloucester, and then George, Duke of Clarence, who was also another brother, who is less well known than the other two. He was the only one there who didn't actually rule as king. But then Edward sees himself as, you know, the guy who's going to become king, because after he does win the Battle of Mortimer's Cross, he goes on to then defeat the Lancastrian armies at the Battle of Towton in 1461, which was the next year. So then he then incorporates this symbol of the sun, or the parhelion, at before the Battle of Mortimer's Cross, and then he puts his white rose of York, which was the traditional symbol of the House of York for, you know, for quite a while, and then he puts obviously the blazing sun in the background, so, you know, it's him the symbolism of him as Edward, which is the white rose, and then the sun representing the parhelion as well. And then we can see this is actually a modern reconstruction, but there was a tapestry at the time with all these 3 stars in the sky. And as I said, his troops were, initially they were frightened, but Edward was a real military genius, and I'm going to look into him in a few videos, and he managed to, he rallied his troops, and he said, "Be ye not afraid, for I am going to be king." He didn't actually say that, I'm just making that up, but he might have said something like that. And again, this was thanks to a brilliant comment from Markish86, who mentioned this, and I'd heard the story before a while ago now, but I completely had no idea that it was linked to this. So I'm incredibly thankful that he wrote this comment, or she, maybe, I don't know, Markish, I'm guessing it's a Mark. But yeah, so thank you very much for doing that, because it, it added a whole thing. And oh yeah, and he also says that it might have represented the Holy Trinity, so the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, which is also then relating it back to the very religious ideas, which is also maybe how Edward, how he made his troops feel better, to to say that this isn't going to be an ominous sign. This is actually a good omen. Now, another commenter actually mentioned a connection between the Roman Draco banner and the Welsh flag. And the Roman, I'll go with Draco banner, was basically this what the Roman cavalry had, and it's not really a flag, but it's, as you can see, it looks more Germanic or Celtic, and it's basically this dragon's head breathing fire with this great red tail going behind it. So it's more of a, I don't know how you would describe it, maybe a standard or a totem, that kind of thing. And then they actually commented that this might be the inspiration for the Welsh flag with the red dragon of Wales, and I hadn't actually heard this before, but I looked this up, and it does indeed, there is a theory that suggests that this is where the Welsh dragon on the flag comes from, and it's also the Welsh dragon used by the King Cadwaladr in the Dark Ages, as I said in the previous video. So thanks very much again for commenting about that, because I had no idea about this possible link between the two, but now I've found out. I've broadened my historical knowledge, for something for which I'm always very grateful. And now the final point is that actually in the previous video I read this statement upside down, because it was another one of the flags, and it had Mulli and then Loyaulte, so I read it as Mulli Loyaulte, although actually how it should be read is Loyaulte Mulli, which is then the other way around, the word order. And this is actually a period piece from a manuscript. And the white boar, again, that's the bristling boar of Richard of York, Richard III, King of England and Wales. And if you are interested in this and you haven't seen my previous video, then I mentioned quite a lot about this symbol in the previous one, so definitely go and check that out if you're interested. And then again, that says Loyaulte Mulli, which I then read the wrong way around. And another person commented on this actually and said that it means loyalty binds me, and this makes a lot more sense, because when you flip this round it makes sense in French as well, but obviously I read it the wrong way around, so I was saying all sorts of things like oh, I'm not sure what this is, and loyauté is probably going to be loyalty, and I know Lee with a T in French means bed and whatnot, and useless linguistic drivel. But thanks very much to Yorkie KDS, who actually cleared this up for me, and this was then a personal motto of Richard III, the Yorkist King of England, who ruled from 1483 to 1485 until the Battle of Bosworth, where he was killed in battle, last English king to die in battle. Alright everyone, so I hope you've enjoyed this. It's just been adding a little bit more information thanks to the brilliant commenting of people on the previous video. I'm always really thankful to everyone who comments. I don't mind getting any questions. It might take me a while to respond to questions and things, but I love every comment I get. Well, almost every comment. If there's, even just people saying, oh, thanks for making a video, or I enjoyed this video, it really boosts my day. So if anything, this video it's a continuation of the first one with some more information, but it's also a massive thank you to everyone who takes the time to comment, and especially those who take the time to comment some more information, because as is shown in this video, I've learned so much from the comment section of the previous video. It's unreal that I could make a whole, this video is probably going to be about 15 minutes long, another video then on this topic, which I thought I had covered in the previous one. But yeah, I'm very thankful for all that you do, and I'm very thankful for all of the support that I get. And the Subscribbler Horde is beautiful and brilliant, and ultimately infinitely intelligent, as has been shown. So everyone, thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for commenting. This is an ode to commenting. Thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you next time. And don't forget to leave a comment in the description below. This has been History with Hilbert, and I will join you all again very soon.